Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all. Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books, and today I'm doing another episode of Fantasy and Face Masks. For today's face mask, I'm going to be using a little sampler that I got recently in one of my Ipsy Glam Bags, and this is called Clay Date from Dew of the Gods. I have done one face mask by Dew of the Gods before, and I really liked it, so hopefully this one will work out just as well. And the books I'm going to be talking about today are two books that are the third book in each of their series. One is Heir of Fire, which is the third book of the Throne of Glass series. And the other one is Covet, which is the third book in the Crave series. So I'm gonna put my hair back and randomly pick one of these books to talk about first, and we can get started. Okay, I think I'm going to start with Covet first, and since I can't hold the book and put the face mask on at the same time, I will just put a picture up here during editing. So like I mentioned, Covet is the third book in the Crave series. If you don't know anything about this series, it's basically like an updated version of Twilight. So we have a young girl named Grace. She is the main character. She was orphaned, her parents died, and she got sent to live with her uncle out in the Alaskan wilderness where he runs a school. But this is not just any school, this is a school for the supernatural. So it's filled with all sorts of supernatural creatures. We're talking vampires, werewolves, witches, like dragons, anything you can think of. I actually think the dragon part is pretty cool. While Grace is there, she gets into a romantic relationship with a vampire, and if you're familiar with Twilight, I'm sure you can kind of assume what happens. So by the time we get to Covet, a lot has happened in this series. Not only is Grace getting to the point where she's going to graduate school, but she's had kind of a falling out with her vampire boyfriend, and she's dating someone else. And I have to be kind of vague here because I don't want to give away spoilers from the beginning of the series. But let's just say that the person that Grace has a romantic relationship with in this book, by the time this book starts, is so much better than where she originally started out. Like, so much better. If you ever had an issue with Edward and Bella's relationship, that is the way that Grace and Jackson's relationship is in the beginning of this series. But luckily that changes by the time we get to this book. Now, other than the romance going on, there is this whole group that they call the Circle. And the Circle is supposed to basically be the governing body of the supernatural world. So the Circle is made up of 2 members of the vampire clan, 2 witches, etc., etc., etc. And it just so happens that the vampires are currently in charge of the Circle, but they are hell-bent on world domination. They're constantly messing with Grace and torturing her because Grace, of course, is not just an average girl, she is super special. I can't say why. But let's just say she's super special, and for that reason, the Coven really wants to destroy her. Sorry, I said Coven. The Circle really wants to destroy her. So at this point in the series, she is trying to figure out a way to defeat the Circle because they're really powerful. And that brings us to the third book. I do have to say that I think that this is the weakest book in the series so far, unfortunately. I found book 1 really enjoyable. Yes, it's over the top, and yes, it's ridiculous, but I found it really funny and it made me laugh. Book number 2, I had a fantastic time with because there were new characters, specifically Hudson, who's a bad boy with a heart of gold type character. Absolutely loved him, and I loved the development of this character. By the time we're in this book, we were pretty much familiar with all the characters, and there are new characters that we meet here, but none of them were as exciting as the ones that we've met so far, specifically Hudson. Another thing about this book that I think made it less on par with the others is that there is a ton of setup. This is a really chunky book, and I feel like not a lot happens. So there's pretty much like one mission that Grace and her friends are on for the entire length of the book. So instead of having like all these different things happen, it's pretty much we're trying to get A to do B, and everything in the book is just about their journey to get this thing. And I felt like that was way too much setup and not a lot actually happens. Like, they don't even fight the circle until the very end of the book. So I didn't really find that as satisfying as the other books in the series, where I feel like there's so much more that happens, so much more character development, so much more plot, so much more world building. Now, none of that is to say I didn't like the book. I did. I do like it. I do like it because I like this series. I just don't think it's quite as strong as the other ones. It's not going to prevent me from continuing the series. It's not going to, make me DNF or stop. I don't do that anyway. But I will just say I don't think Covet is the best one in the series so far. I think the best one is definitely book 2, Crush, but that's just my personal opinion. The one other thing I wanted to mention about Covet is that even though not a lot happens, the things that do happen, I feel like this book is a bit darker than some of the other books in the series. Like, book 1 especially is very light, very fluffy, very ridiculous. It definitely does not take itself too seriously. But in this book, I feel like it is trying to take itself more seriously. There are things that happen to some of the characters that are really devastating, and there are things that are happening to other characters just in the world in general that are again, really tragic. So I feel like this book is a bit darker in tone than the other ones, and I don't mind that. I appreciate a book with a good dark tone. I will just say, though, that's not why I like this series. I like this series because it doesn't take itself too seriously, because it's over the top and ridiculous. So because I feel like this book is trying to make it something that it's not, that didn't quite work for me. But again, I still enjoyed the series overall. That's just something I would warn you if you are going into this one expecting it to have the same upbeat, silly, ridiculous aesthetic that it's had in the book so far. There are still those funny moments in there, those funny, silly lines and all of that stuff that is still in there. Just be warned that this book does take a couple dark turns. So that's all I wanted to say about Covet. It's still a good book. I don't think it's the best one in the series. Not a lot happens in it. The stuff that does happen in it is a bit darker than normal, but that's okay. Still liked it overall. So now I'm going to move on and talk about Heir of Fire, the third book in the Throne of Glass series. And as I've said a million times before, this series continues to surprise me. I had rock bottom expectations when I went into Throne of Glass. I ended up absolutely loving it. I loved book 2, and guess what? I loved this one too. I think this series is so much fun. So super basic setup here. In case you're not familiar, we have a young girl, Selena. She has been trained from a young age to be an assassin. Then she was captured, spent some time in prison, got taken out of prison, said, hey, you can be the king's champion if you win this battle. Yada, yada, yada. So by the time we get to this book, Selena has gone off on a mission, allegedly, for the king. And she's supposed to be visiting this neighboring country where she's gonna, murder these people because the king is, the evil big bad. He's not happy with just ruling his kingdom. He really wants to take over the world. And he thinks he's gonna use Selena to do this. But she has really been struggling with her identity up until this point in the series because she is not who she says she is. And again, I'm going to have to be very vague here, but let's just say that if you are familiar with the Chosen One trope, that is what Selena is. She is the Chosen One, but her character, doesn't want to admit it. At this point in the series, she's really pushed that side of her very deep inside, she does not want to claim her birthright. She does not want to admit who she is because her life has been so terrible and so tragic. So what this book is really about is it's really about her like accepting her destiny, accepting her identity, and claiming who she is always meant to be. But of course, her path to get there is very difficult. It's very tragic. There's many battles she has to win, many obstacles she has to overcome. But honestly, I loved following her on this journey. Like, I really loved it. I think because more so than most other YA fantasy, she really does struggle. Like, she really does struggle with these really deep issues, like not surface level at all, but like really deep issues like PTSD. Something horrible happened to her family when she was younger. She has to come to terms with that. She had a lover in her past who was brutally murdered. She has to deal with that. In a previous book, she had a friend who died. She has to deal with that. She has to deal with all of these things, not just like her physical strength, but like emotionally and mentally. And I think that's really cool. So I loved all that in Heir of Fire. I loved seeing her journey. I loved her being in this new country that we get to explore because there's all these new characters here. There's fairies, and they have all these cool superpowers, and I loved all that stuff. Again, the world building just continues to expand book after book, and it really expanded in this book. We really got to learn more about the fae, the fairies of this world, and their history and their culture, and not all of it's good, some of it's bad, quote unquote, but I found all of that stuff really, really cool. We get to learn more about what the king's real plans are. Like, he did something to erase magic in his kingdom. How did he do that? And now he's bringing in these demon-like creatures, and what is he using them for? And I found all of that stuff totally awesome, super, super, super cool. I'm going to pause right there really, really quick because I believe this has been on my face for about 10 minutes now. So I'm going to wash this off and then I will wrap up my little spiel about Heir of Fire. Okay, back with a fresh, clean face. My face feels very soft, very nice. I will say though that I've done a lot of face masks and I don't think there's anything particularly special about this one. Nothing that I notice anyway. Maybe when I wake up in the morning I'll notice something, but for now I'll say it's nice but not something special. Anyway, back to Heir and Fire. There is one thing about this book, similar to Covet, that makes me say I don't think that this is the best book in the series to me. And that's because there is a lot of time spent in this book on new characters. There are new characters in this book that were not in book 1, that were not in book 2. And honestly, I do not know why they are here. I have been told by others who have read the series that these characters do play an important role later in the series. And I think that's fine. But in this particular book, I found it a little confusing. I'm like, why are we spending so much time with these characters? And just, again, I don't think this is a spoiler, but there's this group of witches that are like training to be part of the king's army. They're not in book 1. They're not in book 2. They're not, at this point, connected to any of the other characters. So I'm like, A, why are they here? Like, why are we spending so much time with them, getting to know them? And B, why aren't we spending more time with the characters we already know? This is a very expansive world. There are a lot of characters, a ton of characters, and there is plenty of room to focus on characters that we already know and already love. But instead, there is a decent amount of time spent on these new characters. So at the moment, I found that not fun. I found it confusing, and it just left me wondering why. Now, maybe that will change later on because, again, I've heard people say that it becomes important later in the series, But because that hasn't happened yet, I kind of have to put that on the negative scale. But again, overall, still love this one. So just to wrap this all up, Heir of Fire, Covet, I did enjoy both of these books overall. As the third books in each of their series, they're good installments. However, I would say that I like Heir of Fire more than Covet. I don't think either of these are the best books in their series. They all have certain flaws about them. Heir of Fire spending way too much time on characters that I don't know or care about, and Covet having way too much plot where not a lot actually happens. But like I said, at the end of the day, still enjoyed them, and I'm still going to continue with this series. That is all for me today. So now I want to know from you, have you read Heir of Fire? Have you read Covet? Do you have a best third book in a series? I don't know. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff and more furry friends coming your way soon. All right, everyone. Happy reading. Always a good girl. Thank you.